Apply yourself to the field ministry. June 29th to July 5th.
Witnessing. Publisher, thanks so much for holding the door for me. I had my hands full. Person, no problem at all. It looked like you could use a hand. Publisher, I really appreciate it. It seems simple, but not everyone takes the time to do little acts of kindness anymore. Person, I know what you mean. Everyone seems to be in such a rush these days. Publisher, that's true. It's refreshing when someone stops to think about another person. Person, I just try to treat people the way I'd like to be treated. Publisher, I think that's a great way to live. Can I ask, do you think people are becoming more caring or less caring these days? Person, I'd probably say less caring. You hear about so much selfishness and anger now. Publisher, I agree. That's one reason I find the Bible so encouraging. It not only explains why we're seeing more of those attitudes, but it also gives practical advice that helps us be different. Person, really? Publisher, yes. One verse I really like is Philippians 2:4. It says, look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. That's exactly what you did just now by holding the door. It's a simple act, but it made my day a little easier. Person, that's a nice verse. It's very practical. Publisher, I think so too. Imagine if everyone tried to live by advice like that. There would be a lot more kindness in the world. Person, that's true. Publisher, if you'd ever like to see more practical advice like this, here's a contact card. The QR code takes you to jw.org, where there are Bible-based articles on kindness, family life, stress, and many other everyday topics. Person, thanks. I'll have a look. Following up, 4 minutes. House to house. Publisher, hi, it's nice to see you again. Thanks for taking a few minutes to chat. Last time we spoke, you mentioned how busy life has been with the children. How have things been this week? Householder, honestly, still very busy. Between work, school, sports, and everything else, I feel like I'm always rushing somewhere. Publisher, I can imagine. It sounds exhausting trying to keep everything running. Parents really carry a lot of responsibility. Householder, they do. Sometimes I worry I'm not spending enough quality time with my kids. I'm with them, but I'm always thinking about the next thing I have to do. Publisher, I think a lot of parents can relate to that. You can really tell how much you care about them just by the way you talk about them. Householder, I do. I just want to do what's best for them. Publisher, that's a wonderful goal. It reminds me of a verse that has encouraged many parents. Would it be okay if I shared it? Householder, sure. Publisher, it's Deuteronomy 6:6-7. It says, these words that I am commanding you today must be on your heart, and you must teach them diligently to your children and speak about them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. I really like that because it doesn't suggest parents need to set aside hours every day. It shows that some of the best teaching happens during everyday moments, while eating together, driving somewhere, or even before bedtime. Householder, I never thought about it like that. I suppose those little moments really do add up. Publisher, exactly. The Bible is very practical. It understands how busy family life can be, and it offers advice that fits into everyday life instead of adding more pressure. Householder, that's encouraging. I could definitely use more practical advice like that. Publisher, I'm glad you feel that way. On jw.org there are some excellent Bible-based articles for parents, with ideas on strengthening family relationships and communicating with children. I'd be happy to bring one next time that focuses on spending meaningful time with your children. Householder, I'd really like that. Publisher, wonderful. When would be a better time to catch you? I'd like to come when you're not rushing out. Householder, Saturday morning is usually much quieter. Publisher, perfect. I'll stop by then, and we'll look at a few practical Bible principles together. Thanks again for your time, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. Talk. Jesus was a great teacher whose advice always works. Have you ever received advice that completely changed the way you handled a situation? Perhaps it came from a parent, a teacher, or an experienced friend. At first you may not have appreciated it, but later you realized that advice really worked. The best advice stands the test of time. It doesn't become outdated. Today we are going to consider the greatest teacher who ever lived, Jesus Christ, and see why his advice always works. We'll look at 3 examples of Jesus' teachings that are just as practical today as they were nearly 2,000 years ago. First, Jesus taught us to forgive others. Please turn to Matthew 6:14. It says, "For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you." Notice that after teaching the model prayer, this was the one point Jesus immediately explained further. That shows how important forgiveness was to him. Why does this advice always work? Because every one of us makes mistakes. If we refuse to forgive, resentment grows and damages relationships. But when we remember how generously Jehovah forgives us, it becomes easier to let go of offenses. Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it often changes the future of a relationship. So Jesus' first piece of advice always works because it promotes peace with both Jehovah and with others. Second, Jesus taught us not to become overwhelmed by tomorrow. Let's read Matthew 6:34. It says, "Never be anxious about the next day, for the next day will have its own anxieties. Each day has enough of its own troubles." Jesus wasn't saying we should never plan ahead. Instead, he was warning against carrying tomorrow's worries before they arrive. Imagine someone going on a hike carrying 2 backpacks instead of one. One backpack contains everything needed for today. The second contains supplies for tomorrow. Would carrying both make today's walk easier? Of course not. It would only make the journey more exhausting. Many people do something similar emotionally. They carry today's problems together with tomorrow's imagined worries. Jesus' advice reminds us to deal with one day at a time, trusting that Jehovah will provide the strength we need each day. That's advice that worked in the first century, and it still works today. Third, Jesus taught us to treat others the way we want to be treated. Please notice Matthew 7:12. It says, "All things, therefore, that you want men to do to you, you also must do to them." This is often called the Golden Rule. But notice Jesus didn't simply say, "Don't harm others." He encouraged us to take the initiative to do good. Imagine if everyone waited for others to be kind first. Very little kindness would ever be shown. Instead, Jesus encourages us to make the first move, to be patient, understanding, forgiving, and considerate. This advice strengthens marriages. It improves family relationships. It builds friendships. It even helps us deal with difficult people. Once again, Jesus' advice always works. Conclusion. Today we've considered 3 teachings from the greatest teacher who ever lived. Forgive others. Don't become overwhelmed by tomorrow. Treat others the way you want to be treated. These teachings have helped millions of people throughout history. More importantly, they help us draw closer to Jehovah. That's why we can confidently say that Jesus was a great teacher whose advice always works. When we put his teachings into practice, we'll experience the benefits for ourselves not only today, but for the rest of our lives.